Life goes on long after the day.
Hey, it's your boy PJ. Today we are going to be taping our first ever webisode. Now, I want to get right into this. I want you to do this for me. Read the story of the parables that Jesus tells in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 15. Okay? And what you're going to find there is that in Luke 15, Jesus is telling three parables. Now, common belief is held that Jesus was telling the same story, if you will, from three different points of view, or something like that. But I'm going to tell you that I disagree, at least partially. And you're about to find out why. I hold the belief, after reading this text, that Jesus was describing here four different types of lost people. Now, the first parable that Jesus tells is about a lost sheep. Apparently, there's this sheep that Jesus is talking about that wandered off. There was 100 sheep in his family group, flock, whatever they call it. A flock. Yes, of course it's flock. Who didn't know that? So anyway, he's got this flock of sheep, and out of 100 sheep, one of them wanders off, gets lost. Now, what happens in this story is, and I'm sure you're familiar with it if you've read the Gospels at all, Jesus goes, or the shepherd, if you will, goes and finds this one lost sheep. Leaves 99 behind, says, fellas, I'll be back, goes, boom, goes, finds out this other sheep. Okay, I think I should insert here that, first of all, not all of the sheep actually follow the shepherd. I know that conventional and traditional wisdom says that the sheep know the shepherd's voice and they follow the shepherd, but that's not altogether true either. Okay, what happens is only certain sheep follow the shepherd. Okay, and the reason that certain sheep follow the shepherd is because when they are born, the shepherd selects certain sheep and he will put them on his shoulders and carry them around with him everywhere he goes, in all of his chores, all of his travels, etc., etc. So that sheep becomes intimate with the shepherd in that he knows what he smells like, he knows what he sounds like, he knows that when he goes with him that he gets what he needs. So the other sheep also recognize that, and they follow those sheep that are most familiar with the shepherd. You follow what I'm saying? Okay, now let's get back to it. Back, and everybody goes buck wild, they're celebrating, they're having a good time, etc., etc., etc. Now, my thing is, big, hairy, woolly deal, okay? So what? Guy leaves 99 sheep, goes and finds one sheep. Huh, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is, of course, that one sheep was just as valuable as the 99, okay, in the shepherd's eyes. It was his job to take care of those sheep, and he went and he took care of the sheep. Now, this is where I part with tradition, because that would have you say that that is the end of the story, and that's all there is to it. Now, again, I don't believe that. If you just read it, what I said is completely appropriate. But there's more. And I say that there's more because if you read in the King James Version of this story, the King James Bible in Luke chapter 15 verse 5 says, and when he hath found it, I just love those haths, and so yeah, never mind, that's why I don't use this, but it says, and when he hath found it, he layeth it on his shoulders. Now, this is the cute part. The word that is rendered here, layeth, means to wound. So the breaking of the legs of a wayward, self-willed, or dumb sheep was what was going on here, and this was a common practice, and it would be something that would rehab this sheep. So the first type of person that Jesus is telling us about here is one that is disobedient and willfully not paying attention. Now, this could happen, of course, to a regular person. And when it does, if this happens to you, expect to be found yet again, and also expect to be chastised. In the end, you're going to be for the better, and you'll also be less likely to get lost again. Okay, so the next parable in our discussion today is found in Luke chapter 15, verses 8, 9, and 10. This parable is the parable of the lost coin. Now, what's going on in this parable that Jesus tells is that there's this woman, we're told, that has 10 coins, and she lost one of those coins, and what happens is that after figuring out that she's lost her coin, she begins to clean house until she finds the lost coin. Now, she does find it, and of course, she's overjoyed. Okay? And what if I told you today that this parable right here has nothing to do with the monetary value of that coin? What actually happened here is that this coin represented this woman's identity. Now, this is what I mean. Back in those days, you know how we have a wedding token today and it's a ring on a finger? Well, back in those days, husbands gave their wives a necklace, and that necklace had on it 10 gold coins. Okay, or 10 coins. Now, if this woman was to lose one of those tokens, then, she'd have a problem, because all of a sudden now no one can recognize me as a wife. And in those days, again, women were not valued as we value them today as our queen. They were second-class citizens at best. So it was very important for people in the society to recognize you as so-and-so's wife, okay? Because that was where the value was. Men were valuable. So you were valuable if you were married, okay? Have you ever lost your wedding ring? Well, I have, and I tell you, you look for it until, you just have no more energy left. Context is everything. Clearly, this is a different type of loss than the one that we find in the first story. The first type of loss was this willful disobedience, not doing what you're told, and so on and so on. And the second one is you've actually lost a piece of who you are. You don't know who you are. You've lost your identity. Now, if this should happen to you, expect, once again, to be found, and then also expect that the righteous people in your life, those that are right with God, would come and join you in celebration and being overjoyed. Okay, now, the last story that Jesus tells here, the last parable that he tells, is the one of the so-called prodigal son. Now, prodigal by definition, of course, means wasteful. And this man was definitely wasteful. We know that he asked his father for his portion of his inheritance ahead of time. Obviously, his father wasn't dead yet, and I can appreciate it. But at any rate, he takes his father's wealth that was set aside for him, and he leaves his father's house. He goes out into the world and enjoys the glory, if you will, of the world, and he has nothing to show for it at the end of a period of time. And he sunk so low that all he was left with was tending to pigs. Now, I really don't have words, if you will, to be able to describe to you what this man must have been going through in order to even be in the same area code, zip code, vicinity, if you will, of a pig. For a Hebrew to touch a pig, I mean, the best thing that I could say is he would rather be dead, which the story effectively communicates in saying the father will say at some point that my son was dead and now he's alive, he's returned again, okay? He really would have been dead to them. So, upon first glance at this story, one could easily try to draw a parallel, if you will, between the prodigal son and the lost sheep, right? Huh? Yeah, you think I wasn't hip to that? Well, if that's so, please notice that there is a very important distinction between the lost sheep and this particular lost prodigal son. In the lost sheep story, the shepherd goes after the sheep and retrieves him, brings him home. In this story, the shepherd is no less caring. The dad, he loves his son. He goes out every day to meet him at the end of the road, but he did not go into Sodom and Gomorrah, if you will, and try to fish him out of a situation. He just waited for him to come home. There's a big difference in those two, okay? This guy, willfully, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. He left. He didn't get lost, per se. He left, okay? So they were waiting for him to come back. And the shepherd, again, does not go out to find the prodigal son in this story. He's concerned, but it's a much different type of concern. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one because it's one that you probably are most familiar with out of all these, okay? And it's probably been preached the most of any of these parables. Now, additionally, there was another aspect of this parable, and that was the elder son. And this elder son, the one that was, thick and thin with dad, he was lost too. He was lost in that he had done everything that the father expected of him to do. He did everything his daddy asked him to do. He didn't lack anything except for the father's heart. He was self-righteous. He was stiff. He was hard-hearted, and he didn't even know it. That's what makes it so ridiculous. Now, I'm going to cut it off here because you get the idea. That's it. 4 different types of lost. Now, I just want to encourage you today to rejoice when you are found, if you be found in him. That's all I got for you today. Again, I'm PJ, and this is Word with Friends. Holla!
Holla, holla, holla. Life goes on, long after the day, so let the love go. Holla, holla, holla. Life goes on, long after the day.